What is up, Gas Money Nation? It's Robert and Austin with the Inside Gas Money podcast, and today we have a very special guest for our latest episode in our Gas Money Mentions series. In this series, we interview business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals to gather insights about their journey, and more importantly, generate valuable learning opportunities for young adults who are passionate about entrepreneurship. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting John Driscoll, who is the visionary founder and CEO of Naked Development. Based out of Irvine, California, Naked Dev was ranked as the #1 app development company in Los Angeles by Clutch in 2021, and they continue to stand out in a crowded space by offering a full spectrum of services, including app development, creative solutions, social advertising, and product launches. Since 2018, they've generated over 3.7 million app downloads, helped their clients raise an impressive $96.5 million, and successfully launched 327 apps. As always, we hope you guys enjoy this episode, get some learning opportunities from it, and if you have a business of your own, always feel free to reach out to us and hop on the podcast yourself. Now, without further ado, let's welcome John Driscoll.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate the time. I really enjoy, listening to you guys and excited to be on here. So Naked Development, we are, what some people would say is we're a top app developer in the world. That's how most people find us. They Google, they want to deal with the best app developers in the world. And we are very much a US-based app development company. We specialize with startups. So we work with people from ideation phase all the way to going to market, raising investment, kind of all the stages of a startup. And so it has been my passion for the last almost 16 years at this point. And it has been a super, an awesome joy to work with young people and older people alike that are trying to create something really, really awesome in the App Store.
Awesome. And as we talked a little bit about, before getting on the record here, a lot of our viewers are young, just like, I'm sure you deal with a lot of young entrepreneurs as well in the startup world. And just to give a little bit more backstory about, maybe how you got started, I'm sure you've already had other startups that you've dealt with and had a lot of experience. And I'm sure all of those successes and also maybe failures has brought you to the success today with Naked Dev. And if you can explain a little bit about maybe getting started and what brought you to the app development world.
Yeah, so it's been a long journey. It's been, quite a journey. So I actually feel like my passion from this really came from my story for the most part. So I started my own company, 25 years ago. It was a financial firm. We did mortgages and insurance and all this stuff. And I grew it from $3,000. That was the investment I had at the time. I actually, took my tax refund and started this company out of there. And eventually, we were doing, millions and millions of dollars. And I essentially never borrowed a dollar. I just kind of grew it from the ground up. And I was the only owner. I didn't have any co-founders. I was on my own. I had about 120 employees by the time I exited in 2006. And so at that time, the reason why I stopped doing it is I really felt like my passion wasn't in it. I was successful, but I wasn't really into what I was doing. I didn't really like financial stuff. I still don't. I just doesn't get me out of bed, So what I was really into, and I started to do in the process of building my company, is I started to make software. And I find a lot of people go down this path. We started making software for ourselves. And so I worked on this project with Salesforce in like 2001, in the early years of Salesforce. And I really was kind of into that. And I got really, pumped up about it, got me very excited. I liked solving problems through technology. And so in 2006, when I left, I was kind of like wanting to go that direction. And then the iPhone came out in 2007. And then to follow that, the App Store released in 2008, March 6, 2008. I'm sitting there at my desk, and my co-founder now, Jason, is in the next office, and we're just like doing web consulting at the time. We really don't have a clear direction. And I watch this thing, and they talk about the App Store, and they're saying we could sign up for $99 and become developers of the App Store. And I didn't even know what that was. I had no clue. I did not know how to develop an app. I did not know how to program, but I was like, I'm signing up. And I signed up that day, and we made our first app, in the first few months after that. And now we've made hundreds and hundreds of, I lost count a long time ago, but this year we actually did 110 apps this last year, 2023. So it's been quite a journey to go through that process. And it's just, been so exciting to see companies grow from nothing into something really, really big. And so we've had that happen many times now. And so it just gets you juiced up. Yeah.
It sounds like you guys not only are just an app development company, but also have a lot of consultancy involved with that. And did you start out like that, where you'd bring a startup in and not only wanted to help create a platform for them, but also help their company, since you've already become a successful entrepreneur beforehand? Did that have a lot of say in becoming more towards that consultancy aspect?
I would love to say yes, but no, we didn't do that at all. I think in the beginning, when somebody goes out to make software or an app or something like that, you think it's about making an app, but what it's not. It's really about building a company. And what I found is that entrepreneurs that came to us had a lot of other bigger problems than making software. There were a lot of developers out there, a lot of people who could make software for them, but there weren't a lot of people who could show them that path to raising money, building a team, marketing, go-to-market strategies, and all those things. And most of the time, you would have to go through like an incubator and accelerator to do something like that. And so we decided to become like an accelerator for hire. And that's kind of what we've become.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's amazing and huge also for young entrepreneurs, or even just people just getting into that space. And it kind of hits home for us a little bit, because we had no idea at the beginning of how to build an app or anything like that. Just a quick backstory on Gas Money. It was started as just a lawn care business between Robert and I in high school. And we got so much feedback from all of our clients, a lot of, older people that couldn't do the work, and then just busy young professionals that are homeowners and that really just didn't want to do work like that, but they wanted to support a young person. That was the biggest step that we took from it. So we said, why can't we build this into a company that provides an opportunity for other young people like us? And we looked at Uber and DoorDash and TaskRabbit and Thumbtack, and we said, we can kind of find this niche in that market, in the gig industry or gig economy. And that's exactly what we did. But the biggest step was for us is finding, a trustworthy software development company that can also understand our budget as young people, first of all, that don't have a lot of business experience in general, and also don't have the finances. So that's really, really huge. And what has that kind of helped, or what have you seen with how much you've helped with those companies that maybe had that same idea that you've worked with? Has that helped a ton? Maybe they didn't have the mentors and they kind of used you guys as those mentors. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of success from that.
Yeah. What really happens when you're a young entrepreneur, right, is you have all this energy and you don't have a lot of know-how, right? At least not experience. And so people have this saying like, I like to learn by experience. But the thing is if you learn by experience all the time, you tend to fail a lot to do that, right? So it takes, like, failures are a high price tag, right? And you cannot afford to fail too much. You can fail a little bit here and there. And so I felt like all of those things when I first started, like I just, had some big failures and all these struggles, and I didn't have a mentor. And what mentors do, or coaches or consultants, what they do is they're able to speed up that growth that you would get by experience, but you can get it faster. Like if you've ever read a book and you're like, oh my gosh, it would have taken me 10 years to learn that. Or, we hear that 10,000 hour rule, right? When I get my 10,000 hours. Well, 10,000 hours takes a long time. So you would rather read a book or have a coach or a mentor, somebody like that can remove that amount of time so that you can get to success faster. And so I feel like that's what you really hire us to do. It's not to just build your app. It's really to stack your possibility for success and to get there faster. So because what the problem with startups is you don't have enough money to fail. Big companies can fail a lot and be okay. Startups have zero chance. You know, you just make a bad decision and you're out of business and you're like, oh, now what do? I got to go to a job at the post office, you know, and that's kind of what happens with a lot of startups. And so you're taking on all this crazy risk and you're not sure if it's going to work.
Definitely. And with your company working with these startups, there's a lot of risk with you as well, where if their company fails and they're not able to pay you, that reflects poorly on you because you're not able to get paid. And with that in mind, what kind of process have you developed? Because I'm sure you have a ton of different applications coming in and you can't accept all of them. So what does that vetting process look like? What do you like to see in a young, hungry entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we get about 200 inquiries a month to work with us. And we only approve 12% of the projects that come to us. So most of the time, the vetting process, you have to go through several steps before you talk to me. And then eventually you get to talk to me. And what I'm really looking for, and I tell people, I'll tell you up front what I'm looking for. And you should be able to crack the code on this very easily. It's the founder first is the most important thing. Do they have realistic expectations for what this is going to look like? Like, some people think starting an app is a side gig. That's the first thing. If you think that, you've got bad expectations. It's not a side gig. It is a full-time passion. And so you will not make it if it's your side gig. So that's the first thing. Do they have clear expectations? Do they understand that this is going to be a hard road, but the rewards are very high? You know, I was at breakfast with some startup founders the other day in San Francisco, and we were just after their first pitch. They pitched in the room full of Silicon Valley experts, right? And I'm like, man, you got thrown into the fire immediately. And so we're really talking through that. And I just said, you know, this is the experience. This is what it's about. It's about going through these scenarios where you're just put into very uncomfortable positions and you're going to have to power through them. This is part of being a founder. This is how you get through it. So I was trying to encourage them, because you know, having clear expectations means you're not going to expect this to be an easy road. And so that's the real thing I look for in a founder. And then, is your idea clear? Like, most of the time I'll ask the question, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Because every app is solving a problem. And if most of the time, I will tell you, this is almost 90% of the time, the founder will go into telling me the solution. I didn't ask them the solution. I asked them the problem. And the reason why they're so in love with their solution is they never spent any time really grasping the problem. And so without a clear problem and a clear solution, or without a clear problem, you don't have a clear solution. That's really what happens. And so if they have bad expectations or they don't have a clear understanding of the problem, that's a red flag for me.
Definitely. And obviously working with startups, that's a large part of it, is helping them maneuver, especially at a young age. It's hard to learn if it's not learning through experience. You know, like, you can read a book and you can learn about it, but it really does hit home when you learn from experience. And like you said, there's a lot of times where failure is huge as a young entrepreneur, but kind of flipping the page to the more experienced people you work with. What have you seen from them did that kind of go along with what you were saying about the young entrepreneurs? Are these more experienced people? Obviously, they usually have teams, they have much higher budgets. Do you think mindset is a large part of how they got there?
Yeah, so I think their expectations are bad in other ways most of the time. So they have resources. And by the way, I've worked with billionaires, and they're sometimes the worst clients you could possibly have, right? And the reason why is because they always think they can buy their way through a problem, and you can't. You just can't. And a lot of times they want to build this crazy big app, and they can actually afford to do so. The problem, the The problem with that approach is it's a bad way to build software. You don't want to build software big. You want to build it small, and you want to learn step by step by step. And that's how you make the software better. That's how you understand the user. That's how you connect with your audience. All that stuff happens by building that way. And so what often richer people will do is they want to buy their way to success faster, and it just doesn't work that way. The other thing that they tend to do is they tend to take a software company and compare it to maybe another industry that they're successful in. And it's kind of a problem because software is very, very complicated, and it's very hard to run a software company. The people are different. Programmers are just different people. When you start hiring programmers, you have got to change the way you approach them. They just don't value things the way a sales team does, right? It's just not the same thing. And so there are a lot of things that have to change. And so they have to be very, very coachable. And that's sometimes hard for a successful person to be. They think they know it all. And so it's hard to be coachable still. And, I think that's something I try to pride myself into, listening,
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a huge point. And, we see that as an outside perspective, listening to podcasts and or interviews from those majorly successful people. But also it's good to see, and all the conversations that you have with what I'll call it a rookie startup founder in comparison to a veteran founder, all of those things. I'm sure there are some beneficial commonalities that you've also seen with either it's the motivated drive or the passion that you see in what they're trying to accomplish when they do have those correct answers that when you ask, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And they go right for, this is the problem we're trying to solve. And this, and this. What are some of, some major commonalities that you've also seen from, in comparison between a rookie startup founder and some of the veterans that have seen major success, but are still trying to, maybe start something new or build a new software with you?
Yeah, I think it's a growth mindset in the sense of personal growth, because it starts with you as a founder, right? You have to be able to say, I don't know everything. I have a lot to learn. I know a couple of things, and I think I can do it. But you're really in this mode of like, hey, I'm on this journey of growth. And that's why you often see, I don't know if you've seen the statistics on this, but second, third time founders who even failed the first couple of times are more successful, because what they did is they might have, the company might not have made it, but they did, right? I was in this, I met with a very popular billionaire. I won't mention his name, but he was telling me that he had a founder that actually unsuccessfully, took his investment and the company failed. And the founder came back and said, hey, do you think you'd invest in my next company? Which is kind of a crazy request, right? And so he gave him another investment. And then that company became Peloton. So he believed in the founder so much that he gave him money twice, even though he failed the first time. It wasn't really about failure. It was about, this guy was on a journey and he believed he would get to his destination. And I think you have to think of it like that. It's not just about the company you're running now. It's about, how are you growing as a person? And are you open to getting better? And if you're not obsessed with getting better, it's going to be a rough go for you. You're, you think like what you are today is going to be good enough. I promise you it will not be. You're going to be tested on all fronts. And I think that's what I look for in any kind of founder, whether it be a young founder or an experienced founder, is like, do they have that mentality of, I'm going to grow my way through this, and no matter what pain I experience, I'm going to use it to get better.
And how much of a degree does their team have on that? Obviously you got to look at the team a little bit too. Yeah. If it's a sole founder, it's all on the founder, but have you seen that there's a large comparison? If you're looking at a founder that might be lacking some skills, their team's usually not as good. Where if you have these ultra successful founders or these founders that are very driven, do you see them having the better teams?
No question. I think, one of the biggest, there are a couple early tests for a founder. One, can you raise money? Two, can you build a team? These are really critical things. If you can't inspire people around you to kind of be in this war with you, then it's going to be a real, hard way. You're going to have a hard time building big talent, and you need to have really talented people around you. I mean, I'm 52. I've been doing this a long time. I essentially can't do anything anymore. Like I can't code anything. I can't design anything. Like I literally have no skills left, like other than what I know. And that's okay. But I'm able to bring a lot of people around me who are really, really talented, who are willing to take their talents and put it into what we do. And I think that's a big test for a founder. Can you inspire people and can you build a team? And if you're a single founder, and you feel lonely and it's really hard, spread the wealth, bring some other people in, start to rally really, really talented people around you. You don't have to have money too. You'll be surprised. You'll have really, really talented people who will, for equity and a little bit of, inspiration from a founder, will get in line and start to try to do something with you. And it's pretty wild how willing people are, to put themselves on the line, with a new career or something when, maybe there's some real risk involved,
Yeah, that's a huge point to bring up that we also talk about with young people that come on, or just conversations that we have that reach out to us. And a lot of times it's in an individual, a sole founder, like you were talking about, and it sounds like you've done that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess to provide some more advice, what have you seen that's helped you out more with having another founder along the way? Because with Rob and I, it's been since day one, and we've only seen the benefits in having somebody there. If there's something that happens and it's either a failure to get through, or it's the small successes, to kind of have somebody there to take the foot off the gas a little bit and say, hey, this was a big win. Now let's keep going, kind of thing. So it's that bounce off of each other. What have you seen that's helped you a lot in Naked Dev with your other founder and having that other person?
Yeah, it's everything. It really is. My first go was very solo. I had a lot of great people around me, but not in ownership, right? And so I really do appreciate they acted like owners a lot, but they weren't at risk like I was, right? And so I think I would never do it solo ever again after having a co-founder. And so Jason was an employee of mine a long time ago, and then he kind of came along when we started this. And so I really appreciated his ability to be the other part of me that I am not good at, right? And so and I think having a founder that you really see eye to eye philosophically is the most important thing. Because if you don't see the world the same, you don't see the challenge the same, if you have a lot of disagreement in the very, very get-go, that will expand exponentially, big time. And I think people really underestimate how bad it is to be in a company that's actually growing with a founder you hate. I've heard horror story after horror story of people leaving, taking, a payout that they didn't want to take or something like that to get away from a founder because it was just miserable. My founder happens to be one of my best friends in the world, and we get along better than any relationship I've ever had, maybe. And so I think we've had 2 arguments, maybe 3 in the last, 15 years. So it's pretty awesome. And so having somebody in the trenches with you is everything. It's very much not to be super masculine, like about this, but like a brotherhood almost, like, at least from my perspective. I don't know how the ladies feel, but I feel like that. Yeah.
Definitely. And we'd agree. I mean, and I kind of want to get your perspective on this too, because we've heard a lot of very successful entrepreneurs say that you don't want to go into business with friends. And we've always kind of been confused with that, because for us, at least, we're always on the same page. And like you said, we have very similar mindsets. especially when it comes like along the lines of philosophy, like you were mentioning, just having that similar outlook on the world. Why do you think these successful entrepreneurs that say you don't want to go into business into friends, do you think they had a bad experience, or does it really just come down to your ability to kind of mesh with that person outside of business and keep the friendship and the business kind of on their own terms?
So I would say this, as a general rule, it's not good to go into business with your friends. And the reason why is because the friendship is at total risk the moment you do it. Jason and I weren't friends before. Robbie and I were not friends before. We became friends through being business partners, right? And that's a different kind of a friend. A friend that, you know, you grew up together or whatever, once you put that on the line, your whole friendship and relationship is on the line. Because if the business goes bad, your friendship will probably be over. I can tell you that. And I would say it's even worse with family. And I have had experiences in this to bring this out. And with really, and I have a great relationship with those people, but I can tell you when you go through financial things and things like that are being said, and you're married and your spouse is telling you this, and that is a very tough dynamic. Then you got to go say it's family. You got to go spend Thanksgiving together. You just can't relax. You can't just be friends. And so it's really hard. And so I say you guys might be the exception. As a rule, I would say don't do it, personally.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess kind of moving more towards naked development. This was a question we were going to ask earlier, but the conversation was going really well. But why naked? Why naked?
Yeah, that's a great question.
The name?
Yeah, so it's about simplicity. So probably the most common thing that we see, you know, with hundreds and hundreds, and I think we might have crossed over 1,000 apps that we built. So with that, the most common thing that we see that causes software founders to fail is building too big out of the gate. It's not only costly, but it's a terrible strategy. So even if you have the money, you shouldn't do it. So Naked was really a response to that after building a lot of software, saying, hey, we really need to strip things down. So we have a lot of puns. We need to strip things down. And really, you think about creation when you come into the world, nobody's wearing clothes, right? We're all naked when we come into this world. And that's what your product should be. So we say there are apps and then there are naked apps. So you want to come in pretty stripped down, only solving the problem and getting it tested, and then letting the feedback of the market speak back to you on what you should add. And so that's kind of it's really a symbol of the philosophy that we teach. Yeah.
I love that. And that point you brought up is building too much too quick. That's something that Austin and we made a mistake with that in a couple aspects of the app, where obviously we were both new founders and we wanted to have all of these different features. And then once we launched our MVP, there were so many different moving parts where it was kind of hard to get feedback, you know, because there were so many different aspects of the platform. And like you mentioned in the text fader, I mean, obviously with Apple, with their app store and everything, just simplicity has seemed like it's always kind of dominated that text space, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's if you can think of it like a relationship with the market when you come out with a product, right? You wouldn't go into a relationship and just start telling them all your deepest, darkest secrets on the first date. Right. I use dating, by the way, a lot as an analogy. I don't know why I'm obsessed with it, but I am. But I would just say it's like that. When you have this relationship with the market, you don't want to try to give them all of it all at once. You just want to introduce what you think is going to solve the problem. Once you've done that, and that should happen in some sort of alpha or beta, so that you can get feedback from people. And then from there, you should step by step add something to it. And I can tell you almost 90% of all founders try to take that way too fast. And it's my job, and it's a tough job to get people to not do it. There's a sickness that I call app insecurity. When you go into the market, you're like, your mind as a founder says more features, more value. People will love us more. They will, you know, so we need all these features so that we're valuable. But the truth is, nobody really knows who you are, and nobody knows anything about your product. And so you just kind of have to start that relationship off really kind of realistic and just solve that problem, and then just start to build that relationship with the user from there. And if you think of it like that, I think it's and be a little bit more patient. You know, everybody always says this, I'm going to put it on the store and there's going to be 10,000 people the first day. And then, you know, they have this really bad narrative that they've told themselves. And so I just think all of that adds up to failure if you go down that path.
Yeah. And I think it's Jeff Bezos that talks about every day is day one. I'm not sure if you've heard that as well. And we've one of our mentors and good friends as well in the space really likes to preach that, because just like you were saying about going too fast and not being patient, that can be the fast track to failure, like you said. And with the the feedback from the space in the industry that you launch into, is that more of a, okay, we'll get feedback and then we will answer to the feedback and add the features that they want? Or is it also new features that they might want and here's to get more feedback? I guess, what is the, or do you do both with that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and Amazon's such a great, it's one of my favorite illustrations of this, because think about where they started. Right now, they sell us everything, right? Like, I literally could make an Amazon order while we're on this call and probably have it before we're done. Like, it's nuts, right? So they sell everything in the world. However, they started with books, right? That was it. And the first sale was a used book, right? And he used to ring the bell when he got a sale every single time. I'm sure he doesn't do that anymore. But and they did the books because they felt that bookstores could not produce what the web could, because there were so many titles, a long list of titles and things. That was their theory. There were so many things to search in a bookstore that a bookstore was a terrible place to try to find a book. And so by creating an online bookstore, we could just search it really fast, find the answer, and order the book. And that was the idea. So he basically started with the theory is anything that has a lot of titles, that has so many options, the web is going to be a better solution for that. So take that theory, that hypothesis, he proves it with books. And I imagine people were asking for a lot of other things to be sold. But what he did is he really stuck to his guns, and he stayed on that same philosophy, and he went into music, right? And things like, and DVDs and things like that. And they stayed with things that had a lot of titles. And so back to your question, you listen to the user, but it doesn't mean you need to do exactly what they tell you to do. You still have to kind of make a decision. So the data is important, but interpreting data is as important as data sometimes, right? You're hearing what the user's saying and you're like going, okay, what does this teach us? So that process is tough, because you can make a lot of things up in your mind. But I think it's important to listen to the user, but not let them dictate what you're doing.
That's a great way to put it, because there's a lot of times where if you're just getting a bunch of feedback and only looking at the feedback in kind of an objective view, where you're not actually uncovering what that means you need to solve for your company, it's just going to become overwhelming. And that's what we found a couple times, is there'll be different clients giving us feedback about a certain feature, and in our heads we think this is what we need to do to solve the feature, when in reality we need to look deeper and figure out what the actual root cause of that problem is. And it's really important. And data is one of those things where it's tough to look at raw data sometimes and make conclusions from it, but that's a huge part of business. And I'm sure you've had tons of experiences with that, just working with different clients and getting feedback and trying to figure out what's really the root cause of their problems that they're having. And like you said, it's kind of the same thing with business. What's the root cause of the problem and how can I solve that? And that's, I guess, going into that a little more, just entrepreneurship in general is all about problem solving. And obviously Austin and I are both still young. I'm 21, he's 22. And one of the things that's fun with entrepreneurship is there's no set path that you need to take. You know, you can kind of create your own path. And when you were getting started, I guess going all the way back to when you started your financial firm, was that one of the inspirations for doing so? Just to be able to make your own path, create your own solutions to problems, or had you already like worked your way up and it was just time to go into that new section of your life?
No, that's a great question. So I think some people in life are risk adverse and they're more comfortable, and this is gonna sound disparaging, and I apologize, but entrepreneurs will love this language. Okay. So they're more comfortable with renting their time to someone else. And that's called having a job, right? You rent your time. You're saying, hey, I've got these 40 hours to spare. I'm going to rent them to you for this price per hour. And then you'll give me this paycheck and maybe some other stuff, right? And then there are people in life that go, hey, I think I want to own my own time. And I'm going to buy other people's time and rent, pay them. And then I'm going to make more money with their time than they could. And like I said, that sounds a little shitty saying that, but it's just, that's the truth in life, right? Some people are comfortable with that. And I think I believed I could use my time better than a company could. That was kind of the belief. And I worked in corporate America. I, worked in banking. I've been in 2 bank robberies. I'd been around a lot of stuff. And at that time, I just was kind of like, you know what? I think I'm tired of renting my time. I think I can take my time and be more productive with it than those companies, those corporations are with my time. And so I think once you've come to that realization, it's pretty hard to go back. It really is. And it's funny, you guys are just a little bit younger than my son, who's only had a normal job. He's 25, like for 1 month of his life. And I told him, you're going to hate it, because he was already self-employed. And he kind of went back to that, oh, let me rent my time out. He did it for a month and he was like, this is not for me. Went back to his old thing and he's killing it, right? And it's like, once you're there and you've tasted that and you're doing well with it, I think it's really, really tough to rent your time again. I can't even imagine what that feels like. Because it's been 25 years. It's to rent my time to somebody for an hourly rate. I don't know. I don't think I could. I don't know what would get me excited. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We talk about that all the time. And, since we started our first thing when he was 16, I was 17. And like I said, we were in high school, and even before that, I was just kind of either selling stuff on eBay or just kind of doing my own thing. And like you said, once you get that first taste, and we have a lot of friends in our close circle that have also had that taste, and a lot of societal norms kind of can try to breach that and try to say, no, this is the path. Either that was college and professors saying those things, or unfortunately a lot of family members, like you talked about Thanksgiving, that conversation, oh, so you still doing that gas money thing, or or you run into somebody from high school and you still doing that lawn mowing thing. And it's I'm sure you've had at the beginning stages, or you haven't talked to a person in a while and you're at a totally different point in your life. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me tell you how the story ends. So let me just tell you, they'll say that until you're killing it. And then all the Thanksgivings are going to be at your house because it's way bigger than everybody else's. That's how the story ends, by the way. And once again, I hope my family's not listening to that. But that's really how the story ends. Your life, if you can stay on that road, will be, I think, more fulfilling. I'm not talking about the money either. I'm really talking about it's just more fulfilling. I love going to war with my guys and my ladies every day, and then we're building something. We're building something exciting. We're actually disrupting markets. I freaking love that. So, and that's why at 52 I'm still excited to get out of bed. But let me make an argument that I think the other way is more risky. So imagine renting your time to this corporation, and then there's this group of people that go off and have secrets about how it's going, and they don't tell you about these secrets. And then when they go, hey, I think we're going to change the way things are. And these aren't the smartest people, by the way. Corporate boards are not brilliant. And they just go, we're just going to get rid of all these people. And whether you're doing a good job or not, you just lost all this security that your parents told you to go get. And I would just tell you that narrative is not true anymore. Maybe it was 60 years ago, 70 years ago when industrial society was pretty stable. But nowadays, corporations are making very, very big decisions that completely impact your life. So imagine you're a guy and you and your wife just decide to have a kid and you have a mortgage. And then this guy up here just made this big decision that completely impacts you. And now you have to go back out onto the market and try to rent that time again. That's scary to me. That sounds way scarier than, hey, let me bet on myself every month.
Right. Yeah. And
exactly.
I love that point. And I want to bring up a quick quote again. It was from Warren Buffett, and it's another harsh reality quote, but he says, in the corporate world or in the job world, you're always one step away from poverty, because you have that one paycheck. And yes, there are still, and I'm not trying to bash on, people going into a corporate job or anything like that.
Okay.
We also need the doctors and the lawyers. Yes. But,
we don't need lawyers. We don't need lawyers.
Yeah. Okay. And, but I mean, you're one step away from losing that paycheck that was paying for your mortgage. And unfortunately, a lot of people that have those paychecks, they get comfortable. And so they're not saving for a potential for that. And I believe entrepreneurship and just business ownership in general, you build that security in yourself and you are much more financially aware. And the belief that you're going to get it done and you're going to live the best life you can with no question is just so strong, because you're completely in control and you're the captain on that ship. Mm-hmm. So I love that you brought that up, because that's huge and great for a lot of people to hear what you were saying.
Yeah, it's really a perceived security, right? It's not real.
Right.
It's perceived. Like, I have this job and I have job, they call it job security, right? But see, in that corporation, you might be the first person they let go. I'm the last person that gets let go in mine. Right. I always have a job as long as I'm here. I'm not going to fire myself. Right. So unless your board fires you, another story. But you have really strong job security when you are the captain of the ship, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. And another thing about entrepreneurship that I really love is just the continuous pursuit of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Both Austin and I, being young, I think there's a lot of times where we've been talking to people older than us, and this is true. We don't know nearly as much as they do, and we've been trying just to learn as much as we can. And for all of the other young entrepreneurs that are listening to this, are there any strong book recommendations that you have or podcasts you've listened to that have just really helped kind of create your mindset and give you more knowledge?
Yeah. So one, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would help. But no, yeah. All right. Shameless plug. So I would say, so Atomic Habits has probably had the most impact on me, I would say, as a book, because what it really teaches is so much about how to make 1% change in your life, and not trying to make these big, massive changes. The other book I would say that I think is really impactful is 10X is Easier Than 2X. So to me, and I'm actually working on a book to try to combine these concepts. And it's really about having these big, crazy dreams, right? 10Xing your dreams, but being willing to take those 1% at a time, right? And so a lot of people, they go, oh, but Grant Cardone told me to 10X. Grant Cardone told me, like, and they go, and then they have these crazy dreams, but they have zero path on how to get there. And I think it's combining those two concepts. And once you get that balance between 10Xing your dreams and really 1%ing your life, I think that's when you can really see that awesome growth. And you're just patient with how long it might take. It's going to take some time. It doesn't happen overnight, but But I love this quote from Tony Robbins. He says, people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in 10. And you go, oh, 10 years, that's so long. But I'm telling you, at 21, if you guys are sitting at 31 and you've accomplished a lot of the crazy dreams that you might have in your head, life will be way different, right? And at 31, you're still super young. And that's why I tell a lot of people, don't try to get married and all. Sorry if you're married, but don't speed up this stuff. Just take your time. And as an entrepreneur, don't have all these obligations, debt and things like that. Really keep it lean so that you can make really, really strong decisions in that journey. And then if you do all that in 10 years, man, at 31, you're super young. You've accomplished a lot. That's an awesome thing. And I wish I'd started as early as you guys did, but I was in corporate America trying to get out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's how it goes.
Which is awesome. And
no, that's really cool.
Did you have another question?
Yeah,
on
I was
that,
going to
Rob?
say, I guess we just got a couple more questions, then we can wrap it up. But one question, I've always been really fascinated by this because there's a lot of differing opinions, especially in the entrepreneurship sphere. Just between, and a lot of people might argue that it's not possible to obtain a balance, but kind of that work-life balance, and especially with you running such an awesome company that's huge, globally renowned. I mean, has it been difficult to achieve that balance where you've got your family, you go to Thanksgiving, everything like that, and still be able to maintain such a large company? Or have you kind of learned to adapt to this over time where you can make sure you tend to both?
So that's a great question, because I think when I was young, I thought that working harder would always solve problems. All I needed to do, it's funny, I shot a video on this earlier this morning. All I needed to do was work harder and longer. And I did in the beginning, and it doesn't solve problems. It really doesn't. There's a great book by Dan Martell. It says, Buy Back Your Time. And I've been telling everybody about this book. And it's really how you build a company is to hire people to replace yourself, right? And so what happens is you end up buying back your time and you end up working less and less hours. I actually work maybe a little around 30 hours a week now, and I'm going to reduce it even more next year. So, and how am I able to do that? People ask me that question. And I would say, I basically get rid of the things that I don't want to do, and I give them to somebody far more competent than me at them. And I really, really try to fill my life up with the things I really enjoy doing. And if you start that from your first employee, the first employee should do that for you. I don't want to do these things. Let me get somebody who can do them better than me. If you just keep that in mind as you're building, as you get more and more employees, you end up doing all the things you love to do, and you don't overwork yourself. And so that process, and Dan Martell's book will explain that whole thing. And I have all my board members doing that, and they have to come back to me and tell me how they're going to do that. And so I hold them accountable. How are you giving up the things you don't want to do and putting somebody else in place so that you're reducing down and you're really focused in on the things you're best at? And once you start doing that, you actually find that you're not working a crazy amount of hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so you get that balance. Yeah, you get that balance. Yeah.
Definitely. And like you were saying, that's where then you're able to find that fulfillment as well in your life. Mm-hmm. Because if you're only doing the things that you love to do and that provide fulfillment in your life, then you're always going to wake up with a smile on your face. And I think that should be the goal for a lot of everyone. And I mean, even the hard days, you get through them, and there were certain problems that you had to solve. You're still solving, or you're still working in that realm of the things that you want to do at the end of the day. So that's huge. And I mean, another huge thing that we've seen in just from doing some research on your business and everything, is providing that financial raising capability and that financial raising knowledge that I think, especially in the tech space, it can be very, very, and we're going through that right now, but it can be very intimidating to a lot of young people or even just new people that have never done it before. So I guess if you want to explain maybe just a brief overview of, for somebody listening that is either going through a funding round or has no idea where to start, just where to start. Because I'm sure you have probably a lot of connections and everything that you've built over the years, but going back to day one on how you maybe started raising capital for yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually learned from people around me that were raising capital at first, because we didn't need to raise capital at the time. And so I just watched these other companies, how they were doing it. And now that I've seen essentially, $100 million that I've watched raised in the last 5 years around me, and seeing that over and over and over again, you start to see that there's these patterns of how people raise money and these attitudes of how they raise money and what they have to have done to raise money. And so it's interesting. I feel like the accelerators kind of help, but I feel like there's a real gap in this section, which is why I actually, in 3 weeks, I'm coming out with a free class on how to raise money to really go through this, because I've really compiled all of the lessons that I have and I put them into this class. And so we're offering a free, a 3-day class that we're going to be offering. And if you go on our website at nakeddev.com, you'll be able to do that. And there's going to be some companion materials that you can get your hands on after that, because I think there's a big black box, right, to raising money. Like, what do I do? What do I need to do? How do I do how do I show my data? How do I show my deck? All these things. And so I think you need to get help for the most part. If you're just out there trying to figure it out, man, that lesson will take way too long. It's taken me 10 years to really understand the steps to raising money. But I will tell you this quickly. You seriously have to look at it as a sales job, and you have to take it very seriously. You need to have a pipeline. You need to build up a database of these people, whether they give you money or not. Even if they say no, they're still in your database, right? And that's kind of part of what I'm teaching, is like how to do that. How do you get yourself in front of them? And what do you keep saying to these people to keep them interested? Because a lot of times the person early that doesn't give you money is the person who will give you money later. So it doesn't mean, just because it's no, it doesn't mean no forever. It means no now. That's all. It might be yes later. And so part of what I'm trying to do is really build a system of how to raise money. And I haven't really seen a lot out there on that, which is why I'm doing it.
Yeah, because we haven't seen much either, and I love that you're doing the class for it, because especially being young like us, we've made a lot of connections through this already, and we're very fortunate, but it's tough. I mean, there's no, like I said, there's no set path. So that's awesome that you're doing the class on it, and we'll be sure to plug that in the podcast too once you got it out. We can put the link down there, everything like that. And I guess just kind of wrapping it up, we've had some amazing conversations, and thank you again for hopping on. Our last question, which we always ask at the end, very cliche, but if you had one piece of advice to give to your younger self when you were 21 years old, what would that be?
Oh, I was not a very good reader. And I feel like the books I have are like my mentors now, and so I was really far in my entrepreneurial journey when I really started to digest books. And now I think Amazon sends me at the end of the year from Audible that I do about 400 hours a year on books. And so I would just say really immerse yourself in reading on a regular basis, whether it's Audible or reading. Either way, I don't care, however you get the information, but really doing that, I think, makes a huge difference. And read things that are relevant to what you're going through. That's kind of what I do. I read tons of stuff. I'm going through this. Let me get in there and try to solve the problem by getting my head clearer on what's going on. And I think you can do that with books. I really do. I think though it'll help make your journey go a little faster.
Yeah, that's great advice. And young people don't like reading. It seems like it's I mean, I personally don't like reading that much, but I've been trying to push myself to start doing it more. Because like you said, they're almost like your mentors in a certain capacity. The books are. So awesome. And then one last thing before we let you go. How can people find you? I mean, I think you already plugged the website, but just go ahead and give some plugs out there.
Yeah. So nakeddev.com, also on Instagram at nakeddev, and then YouTube. Just look up Naked Development. You'll find us. We are really diving in heavy in content this year. That's really a big part of my job nowadays. And so I really enjoy it. And we're excited to, give a lot of free stuff out and really help direct people.
Yeah. So no, I love that. So.
We appreciate having you on again, like Rob was saying. And these were some amazing points that you were saying. And I think a lot of the things that either young people or just people getting started in the business world need to hear. So that was great. And also great to meet you. I know this is the first time we've met, but I'm sure hopefully we can talk more in the future. And I guess at the end here, as we always say,
Go get that gas money.
Gas money.